the membership drive is going to go until September, and we want to thank Mr. Hawks, Deacon Hawks, again for sponsoring 10 memberships. We appreciate his sponsorship, and he also sent a message. He said to Mandy Days and to Angel, who is our secretary. Mandy Days is our executive member and chairman of the Infant Maternal Mortality Task Force. He said, if you, and I'm quoting, he said, if you're not going to have 30 memberships, you're going to come up short, because that's where he's going on the membership drive. So I wanted to acknowledge him and thank him, and also tell him that Judah Dorrington said that she's in the running and he better get ready. So we thank each and every one of you who has participated, each and every one who's taken out a membership. We appreciate you, and we thank you so much. Also, I wanted to recognize our assembly person, John Amato, who is sponsoring some memberships. And Yolanda, you'd be interested to know he's going to sponsor some youth council memberships in addition to some adults, and I thank him. Also, I want to acknowledge my friend, without naming them or even their gender, for doing 10 youth council memberships and an adult membership. And the only reason I'm not naming their name or their gender because I don't have their permission. But they know who they are, and I appreciate them, and I thank them. Having said that, let me just say that we also thank Bryn Whittle, who I think might be listening. She's a Deputy Attorney General. She's in charge of community engagement for the Attorney General's office. We thank her for all of her support. Let me say this. The NAACP is totally committed to criminal justice reform, to increasing the cooperation with the community and the police, and to letting people interact in a positive way with law enforcement. It's one of the pressing problems, not the only problem, one of the pressing problems we have in this society, and we have to continue to work on it. And I think we have a lot of partners, and we're going to do that. Really, for real, the last thing, Yolanda, the NAACP is going to, and I announced this today, we're going to do a survey in Atlantic City of the community attitudes toward the law enforcement in Atlantic City. We're not focusing on national, although there are national issues and there's state issues. We want to focus with laser-like intensity on Atlantic City, the Atlantic City Police Department, the community and people of Atlantic City and their concerns, our young African-American males and women, their concerns and their attitudes, our seniors, their concerns and their attitudes, our homeowners, our renters, and we want to be able, at the end of our study, which we will probably, hopefully, be done sometime in mid-October, to present to the Attorney General, the prosecutor, the chief, and the general public our findings. And the goal here is we don't have any preconceived notions. We want to hear what people have to say. We're going to do it anonymously so people can give their true feelings, and we're going to use this to make better relationships with the community and with law enforcement. And also, obviously, Yolanda, we're going to have plenty of help from you, since you are a member of the court, a officer in the Bar Association, and our legal redress officer. So we're going to make sure we do it right, but we want to make sure that people feel that they can give us their honest opinions, because that's what we need. We need honesty, and we need truth. We need veracity, so we can solve some of these problems. I believe that we can. So without further ado, I've talked long, and I wanted to our esteemed co-host, Yolanda Melville, Esquire.
Thank you, President. All good things, and I do want to give you kudos for a job well done, you and the Chief and Prosecutor Turner and the Attorney General, amongst other distinguished panelists today on the conversation about African Americans and their interactions with police officers. It was timely. I can tell you that from a national perspective, this is the same conversation that many of our young leaders are having across the country. Yesterday, the Next Geners were able to have a conversation with a lot of national staff on what defunding means and what those terms mean, and just understanding how they impact your community. A conversation that we've had, that we've been having for weeks, and we continue to have. So we are right in line with what many other communities are discussing. So this is what we all want to hear about, and I look forward to more conversation on those topics. And I know that you were able to receive numerous questions from young people in today's roundtable, which was excellent, because I am a next gener, but I am a proponent of young leadership. And Constance Days, as you mentioned, who is our chair of Informatality, and I have been brainstorming what we're calling the 100 Youth Movement. And we've talked about it here on the program, but it really is going to pick up speed here in the next couple of weeks. We've gotten some more partners in to really understand and cultivate young leadership in the Atlantic City community. So look for more information on that. But really, we're still taking donations. So if you would like to sponsor a youth for $10, please let us know, and I'll tell you very shortly how you can become a member, whether it's an adult or a youth. And then the president wants me to. Did you have something to say, President?
Let me interrupt you very quick. I wanted to thank. When you start naming names, sometimes you leave people out and you forget to charge it to my head, not to my heart. I wanted to thank the Stasha Davis, because she's going to be sponsoring young people, and I want to thank her very much for her sponsorship.
Awesome. Okay. So, as we do every week, we have our distinguished interviewees today, who are going to be Shara Goodman and Douglas Stanger, coming up in the next half hour. But let's talk about other information that we need to know for the community. So one is, how do you become a member? You can always send your correspondence to our P.O. Box in Atlantic City, NAACP at P.O. Box 1182 at Beacon, New Jersey, 08201, or you can also do it online at naacp.org/become a member. You type in 08401 for Atlantic City, click search, and you will actually type in 2077B for the Atlantic City branch. And as we've always stated, adult memberships are $30 for 1 year, and youth are $10. So while I am not in the running, although I understand of everyone who encourages membership to our branch, I am championing the concept of us bringing more young people to the table. So again, I am part of leading the effort of increasing our young people and what we're calling the 100 Youth Movement. So please let us know if you can donate to that. If you'd like to get in contact with us, our email is acnaacpchapter@gmail.com, and we will also answer any questions there as well. We do have an upcoming annual convention. Unfortunately, this year's convention is going to be all virtual, and if you'd like to attend that, if you're a branch member and are voting, you can contact us here at the NAACP's Atlantic City branch, or you can go to the www.naacpconvention.org for more information. And the deadline to register is going to be Friday, July 31st for those who are in our branch membership. And the annual convention this year is going to take place on Sunday, August 2nd through, I believe it's Sunday, August 15th. So that's how you have more information about that. You can always contact us. Although the primaries are over, the voting has continued because we have a general election this year, the presidential election. We have a number of congressional seats. We have a mayoral seat in Atlantic City. We have a council seat. So how do I become a registered voter here in New Jersey? As we stress every program, but there's going to be someone else because there's so many other unregistered voters in our community that this information is still important. You have to be a United States citizen. You have to be at least 17 years old, though at the time of voting, you have to be 18 years old, a resident of the county for at least 30 days before election, and new to this year, if you are on probation or parole, you are eligible to register to vote. So long as you or someone that you know, a loved one, a friend, a family member, is not incarcerated, he or she is eligible to register to vote. So please encourage our brothers and sisters who have been through the criminal justice system to exercise their right to vote. This is so important, and it's done on a state-by-state basis. Recently, the United States Supreme Court ruled on a case out of Florida, and they overturned the Florida law allowing people who are who have felonies and misdemeanors the right to vote, as they had done there in Florida. So this is something that not every state has. We are fortunate in New Jersey to have expanded voter registration opportunities to those who are in our criminal justice system or have been through that. The primary election, we know, came last a couple of weeks ago, but as a reminder, our general election remains November 3rd, which is a Tuesday, and the voter registration deadline for that is October 13th, 2020. We also want to stress, as we've stressed over so many programs, that we are still taking information for the census. This is an opportunity for our community to have a fair share of up to $675 billion in federal money, which goes to supporting schools, hospitals, roads, and other vital programs. That information that you sign up on the census is also used as an analytical tool. That data is used to understand whether there should be jobs created, whether a store should be in your community, whether a supermarket should be built, and whether there should be new homes or revitalization of older neighborhoods. That information should happen, and that comes directly from our census. We also use it for public safety programs and emergency preparedness routes. And of course, here at the NAACP, amongst other organizations, we use that information for our advocacy, for our legislation, and other ways that we can speak to the community's needs. So again, please fill out your census if you have not. And as a reminder, the census does not ask you for your Social Security number. It will not ask for any monetary donations. It will not ask you to tell the United States Census about your political party. And it will not ask for any credit card or account numbers. And also, it will not ask your citizenship status. So please, if you can, 10 questions, less than 10 minutes to complete the census. The last thing on my list, President, is going to be another NAACP program called the Authors Roundtable that will be held on July 23rd, which is this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And the National NAACP will be holding a roundtable with Ed Gordon, author of Conversations in Black on Power, Politics, and Leadership. And there will be other distinguished panelists, including Tiffany Cross, D.L. Hughley, Lonnie Love, and Bakari Sellers. And each one of these people are known for various roles. But in this roundtable discussion, they will be discussing their books that they have published. And of course, our distinguished national president, Derek Johnson, national president and CEO of the NAACP, will be speaking as well. So again, Thursday, July 23rd, 2020, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for those who'd like to join, you can always go to naacp.org, or you can call in at 866-757-0756. Again, 866-757-0756. And this is the NAACP's Authors Roundtable discussion. And with that, President, I believe I will turn it over to you.
Okay, Yolanda, let me just tag onto this. An educator friend of mine said that you need to repeat things 3 times before people catch on. So you did it twice. That roundtable is very, very important, as they all are. So could you repeat that again for the 3rd time so that our listeners catch that?
Absolutely. The NAACP's national office will be hosting the Authors Roundtable discussion with Ed Gordon, Tiffany Cross, D.L. Hughley, Lonnie Love, and Bakari Sellers, and of course, our president and CEO of the national office, Derek Johnson. To attend, that is Thursday, July 23rd, 2020, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can call in at 866-757-0756. Again, 866-757-0756, or you can always access the program at naacp.org.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to that. I've caught all of the NAACP town halls that we've had. They're all very interesting and provocative. My daughter has told me that I'm a nerd. She said that I was a nerd before the term became popular. So I like books. I've always liked books. In fact, I read Bakari Sellers' book. Very, very good, very interesting, good read. and I would encourage people to please tune in on Thursday for that. I think you will get something from that, and also you get a chance to hear from our very dynamic president, Brother Johnson, who is everywhere. I see him on TV. He's in the newspaper, and he is really representing, as young folks say, he's representing. And what's the word? He's dope, I think. Not a dope, but he is dope. So
he is dope.
He's dope. Let me just say this as we get ready to go into our 5 o'clock hour. We have our very special guest, our good friends from ADL. And just for our tally, Yolanda, these are my guesses. Is that correct?
Sure. This week they can be your guests.
Oh, my goodness. You gave in too easy. For those listeners.
They are very distinguished attorneys and civil rights advocates, but because they fit both of our roles, you're a civil rights advocate, I'm an attorney, I think this time I'll give them to you as your guests.
Oh, my goodness. For those listeners who are wondering, we've had this ongoing friendly contest as to who's guest, and I felt mistreated because when the Attorney General came, Yolanda pulled out the alumni card. They went to the same school together. Then she pulled out the attorney card on me. And then when the Lieutenant Governor came, she pulled out the woman card. So maybe this is your atonement, right?
No, I have one condition.
Oh, my goodness.
If I can claim earlier's roundtable with law enforcement as my program for the day. Because both Prosecutor Tyner, who went to Howard, was on there, and
right.
AG Graywall, who is my William & Mary alum. So I'll just take that, and we're even for today.
Okay, we're even for today. Distinguished guest today. Three things to our listeners, and we have been pushing this from the NAACP on every way we can. Please wear your face mask when you go outside. Despite what our president says, we respect the institution and the office of president, but we disagree adamantly with him with regard to his attitude towards face masks. Yolanda, until his poll numbers start dropping, now he's a proponent of face masks. But we want you and our listening audience to wear your face mask every time you go out. We noticed that in Atlantic City, it seems like there's an uptick in people wearing their face masks. We just wanted to give a shout out to our mayor, Mayor Small, who is giving out face masks and personal protection equipment to coming to the city workers who are coming back shortly. And he is pushing that, and we are united with him in that effort. So wear your face mask when you go outside. Please practice social distancing. Wash your hands frequently and keep your hands away from your face. That is good, sound advice that is based on public health principles, that does not deal with your politics or your religion or your preference or where you live, but deals with only saving and safeguarding your health. I just found out today, Yolanda, that one of my constituents passed away from COVID-19. He's a barber in the district that I represent, and I was so sad to hear of that, but it's happening much too much, and we get tired in America easily. The fight is not over, it's just beginning, and we have to listen to the public health experts. We would be remiss if we would not in our 4:30 hour, Yolanda, say a word of tribute to two civil rights giants who passed away, Reverend C.T. Vivian and Congressman John Lewis.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King said about C.T. Vivian, and I wish I'd heard him. I never heard him speak. I saw C.T. Vivian on TV a couple times. But Martin Luther King said that C.T. Vivian was the greatest preacher that he'd ever heard, which is a towering tribute, and he included himself in there. So for Martin Luther King to say that a person was the greatest preacher that he ever heard, I mean, that's an amazing, amazing tribute. We all know C.T. Vivian was a icon of the civil rights movement, someone who sacrificed a lot, who was a leader in the South and with Dr. King, and a tremendous, tremendous figure in our history. And you run out of superlatives to describe John Lewis. John Lewis was actually the face of the civil rights movement for 5 decades. He was the last surviving speaker of the March on Washington in 1963, and he's just someone who people attach themselves to for the great things he did in his life. And I don't know if you know, Yolanda, or our listeners know, but in 2013, Congressman Lewis was the commencement speaker at Stockton. In fact, that's the year my grandmother graduated, and I had a chance to see him in meeting very, very briefly. But he was the commencement speaker at Stockton in 2013. And as always, a very interesting, compelling speaker. I don't remember what was said at my college graduation, but I remember what he said. And he was just a person that we can try to emulate. And like I said yesterday on an interview, Yolanda, what I think our friends in the legislature at the federal level should do as they give glowing tributes to Congressman Lewis, and it's going to continue as his service comes up probably later in this week or earlier next week. The best thing they can do is pass the Voting Rights Act, in my opinion, change it, as the Speaker said, Speaker Pelosi, change it to the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and pass that bill and support the other issues that he fought for. I think that's the greatest tribute to John Lewis, and I'm sure that that's what he would ask for, although the statues are good, the murals are good that they have, the editorials are good, and testimonies are good, but he tried, him and Reverend Vivian, to make a difference and make a change. They both did. I think it's up to us to carry that forward. And so I can send a message to our federal officials. I would say that. I think maybe in the coming weeks, maybe we need to ask Congressman Van Drew, who is our current federal official, and Amy Kennedy, who is a person running to be a federal official, to come on. Maybe we need to take their temperature regarding some of these issues as we move forward. Let me also say this. Believe it or not, this is the 7th month of this show, almost the 7th anniversary. Our first show on WHA was January 22nd, the day after the King holiday. And here we are in July 21st, almost 7 months to that day, still going strong. And I just wanted to note that. It seems like time flies when you're having fun.
Oh, yes. And before we go into our 5 o'clock hour as well, you talked about Congressman John Lewis, and you and I have talked about this, but I want to just demonstrate to people that leadership comes full circle. So as many of you know, and as President Khalil Shabazz has said many times, I lead over 400 millennials and Gen Zers around the country in civil rights, and I'm honored to know so many of them who lead their own NAACPs, including James Major Woodall in Georgia. He is the youngest Georgia State Conference president of the NAACP there has ever been. The youngest in the country of state conference presidents, but certainly the youngest in the country now currently. So he's 26 years old. And when Congressman Lewis's seat came up, he put his name to be considered. And out of 131 applications, he was in the top 5. So he was not, unfortunately, not selected, but certainly is a strong leader who has demonstrated over the last 6 months that he is destined for greatness. And I just want to demonstrate to young people in our community and across the country that if you have a dream and you want to get into good trouble, like Congressman John Lewis said, there is a place for you. So stay encouraged and continue to lead and join the NAACP. That'll turn it over to you, President.
Thank you so much. I see our guests have joined us, and we want to welcome both of them. They are members of the ADL, which is the Anti-Defamation League, and you will hear more about this as the 5 o'clock hour goes on. And I just wanted to thank them so much for taking time out of their schedule to be our guests and to be with us this afternoon. We have in order, no particular order, but in Shira Goodman, who is the executive director of the ADL for our area, and my longtime friend Doug Stanger, Esquire, who is a executive board member, a social justice advocate, and a brother beloved. And we want to thank them for being our guests. we intend to continue to pursue the partnership of the ADL and the NAACP. As we said before, the ADL and NAACP have a partnership on the national level, on the state level, and on the local level, and it is our duty and our job and our great pleasure to implement that and continue to expand it. So, Yolanda, over to you for introduction.
Hey, welcome guests. I'll read your bios and then we'll get into the first question. So the bio I'll first read is Ms. Goodman's. So Shira, is that correct, Shira? Shira, please excuse me. Shira Goodman is the Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League's Philadelphia region, which serves Eastern Pennsylvania, Southern New Jersey, and Delaware. She joined the ADL in January of this year and now has been fighting hate from home longer than she was in the office. That's a good one, Shira. For 7 years before joining the ADL, Shira has been the Executive Director of Ceasefire PA, a statewide organization working to end the epidemic of gun violence in Pennsylvania and across the country. Prior to that, Shira spent 10 years as Deputy Director of Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, a nonprofit working for fair courts and equal access to justice, and 5 years as a labor lawyer for Ballard's Bar. Shira is a member of the Board of Trustees of the Jewish Federation of Greater Philadelphia, a board member of the Perelman Jewish Day School, and a board member of Guns Down America. Shira is a graduate of the University of Michigan and Yale Law School. Now, Mr. Stanger, he's no stranger to our community walks and our marches, but I will introduce him to our guests, our listeners as well. So Doug Stanger is the past chair of Flatzer Greenberg's Bankruptcy, Financial Restructuring, and Risk Management Department, and he concentrates his legal practice on bankruptcy, corporate law, and real estate law. Mr. Stanger is an active leader in professional associations as well as community organizations. He is a former recipient of the Atlantic County Bar Association's Honorable Benjamin A. Rim Award for Outstanding Young Lawyer of the Year. He is also a recipient of the New Jersey Bar Association's Young Lawyers Division Service to the Community Award. Now, Mr. Stanger, can you tell us your role there at the ADL?
Sure. I am a member of our Philadelphia Region Executive Committee.
Thank you.
I've been involved with them for many years.
Well, there you have it. There are our guests, and I'll turn it over to you, President, for our first question.
I really had another question in mind, but due to the recent incidents, I'm going to ask a different question. I'll start with you, Shira, and then Doug, if you want to pick it up. What is your response to President Trump sending in troops to Portland, Oregon, and his announced plans to send in federal troops to Chicago?
Well, first, thanks for having me, Kaleem and Yolanda. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm excited to continue the long partnership between the NAACP and the ADL. We're very concerned about this. These cities have not been asking for federal help. There's reports about some of these officers not being identified, not wearing their names, not identifying their agencies. And if you listen to the mayors, I heard the New York City police chief on the news this morning saying that although they cooperate with their federal partners and their state and local partners, they don't need this help right now. And so it's very concerning. The ADL is watching. There's been threats that this might happen in Philadelphia as well. But we're worried about this. This is a very concerning development, and I know my colleagues in Portland have been watching this and reacting since the weekend.
Well, the president said he was going to send troops into Democratic-run cities that have Democratic mayors. Does that have constitutional implications?
I mean, I think as a I haven't studied this in a while, but I think separation of powers, certainly, states, the relationship federalism between states and the federal government. Yeah, I think there could be some constitutional issues. There are shared jurisdiction over certain law enforcement functions, but within cities and the police power and how things are exercised and the normal course of how cities ask for help and get federal help, this is not how it usually proceeds. And so that's very concerning, this idea that it's only going to be Democratic cities. the president has said things about cities where gun violence is rising, and we've had a very difficult summer, and that's something, I follow because of my work at Ceasefire PA for so long. Also some cities where there's been protests, and we know in Philadelphia recently the protests have been very peaceful. Interactions with police have been going very well. So it's kind of, why all of a sudden are we seeing this change in federal tactic? And so we have to watch. We have to listen to what the president says. We have to watch what he does, and then we have to see what steps our mayors and our governors and our state's attorneys will take.
That leads me, and then I'm going to let Yolanda ask the question, so I don't want to be accused of taking all the questions up. But what does the ADL do, and where is the ADL going in the short term and in the midterm with regard to the issues that you champion?
So our mission for the last 100+ years has been a dual mission always. It has been to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure just and fair treatment for all. So that has led to a broad group of issues that we work on: preventing anti-Semitism, tracking anti-Semitism, fighting anti-Semitism, and all forms of hatred, racism. And right now we're seeing a lot of anti-Asian, American, Asian, Pacific Islander mistreatment against those folks because they're being blamed for the coronavirus. We are working with, at the ADL in Philadelphia, a Black Jewish Alliance that's working on issues, especially post-George Floyd. How can Jews be good allies to the Black community in this time as we're fighting systemic racism? How can we understand, as individuals and as groups, our part in the problem and our part in the solution? We work on issues of immigration. We work on protecting the LGBTQ+ community. We work with our law enforcement partners. We work on expanding voting rights. So we have a broad agenda, but always in service of that mission to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to secure just and fair treatment for all. And that leads to a lot of alignment with NAACP.
Londa?
Thank you. So this question is for both of you, Doug and Shira. Why are you members of the ADL? Why is this important to you?
Doug, you want to start?
Sure. I'll start out with telling you about my parents. My parents value greatly a newspaper picture that they had framed in their house. That was a picture from 1948, where they were married in 1948. And they're in D.C. on their honeymoon, and they're supposed to go to the orchestra. And they get to the orchestra, and blacks are not allowed, and there's a picket line in front, and they choose not to cross the picket line. And there's a newspaper article written about this young married couple who choose not to cross the picket line in Washington, D.C. in 1948. I guess I have to, give some credit to my parents, who brought me up in New York as an individual that was very cognizant of issues of discrimination. And after law school, and actually during law school, I clerked for the Anti-Defamation League in the National Law Department in New York. And it was an amazing building and facility right across from the UN, and really epitomized what they do. Several floors were just people cutting articles. The ADL, there's no one like the ADL as an organization that investigates hate groups and is used as a resource for the FBI. They advocate. I was working in the National Law Department. We were writing amicus briefs for the Supreme Court decisions at the time, and they educate. So I think, I sort of had in my DNA that these issues were important to me, and that I was going to navigate my way to find organization, and the ADL was the one that could enable me to help fight, as we call it, the good fight these days. So that's, I think it goes way back. And then I just should add, and Colleen, it was, nice remarks about our relationship. We've had a relationship for 30 some odd years, going back to Dr. Vera King Ferris and her coalition that she put together back in the day, and have been working together through the years, just as the ADL has been working, whether it was the Civil Rights Amendment and, Voting Rights Amendment, or lawsuits 2 years ago where they're trying to destroy the Voting Rights Amendment. So we have continued in the same path.
And I have always supported the work of the ADL. I've worked, as you announced, for a lot of single mission organizations for the last 20 years of my career after I left private practice, wanting to put my law degree to work in public policy. When this job came up, this job was never open. The people who had this job before me, held it for 25 years between them. And so I wasn't looking, I wasn't in a job search, but it was an opportunity I had to pursue because it's such a storied organization with such a great platform, works on so many issues. And, it was hard for me to leave Ceasefire PA. Gun violence is an issue that it's so, it tugs at your heartstrings, and you meet so many survivors and victims and people who have lost, and you want to be there for them. And I'm still doing that as a volunteer, but the opportunity to be at this center in the fight against hate and the fight to expand justice and access for everybody is just an opportunity that I had to take. And so, of course, I didn't know that this moment, we would be at this very unique moment in our history, and so I'm just very lucky to be here.
Yolanda, no question?
I was just going to add, similar to you all, I too, as a young practitioner, Doug, my path followed yours similarly, where I was a young lawyer in the NAACP's national office and was there to help them figure out whether they should sign on to amicus briefs and reviewing those. And I had that opportunity both with the NAACP and the Brennan Center. So it doesn't leave you when you have that opportunity. You never leave these organizations because they live and breathe on young minds and just minds who are committed to the effort. My question to you, both of you next is about, there's a campaign between the NAACP and the ADL called Stop Hate for Profit. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and, just your work in these areas, especially on the social media realm because it's become so prevalent?
This is a really exciting campaign. The NAACP, the ADL, Color of Change, Sleeping Giant, and some other big nonprofits got together at the beginning of July and started this campaign to take a pause from advertising on Facebook. There is a lot of hate online, a lot of online harassment. ADL studies this, and like 42% of people have experienced hate and harassment online on these platforms. There's been efforts to get Facebook to make some changes to its policies in terms of, who can you complain to if you suffer something like this? Can you talk to a real life person? How are they flagging content? How are they removing content? And they haven't made the changes that the organizations have requested. So they've asked people to take an advertising pause on Facebook for this month, and the response has been tremendous. Some of the biggest corporations all over the country, and then nonprofits too. And look, groups like the NAACP and the ADL use Facebook advertising to boost posts, to get following, to get more, to expand their reach. They might not spend as much as some of the big companies like Ford and Honda and Pepsi, but it adds up. And they've been, I know our CEO and your CEO have been on TV together talking about it, and it's just been a tremendous thing. Individuals have signed on to the campaign, and Facebook has started to say they might add certain positions, they might do some things, not all of them, but it seems to be having an impact. And so we'll have to see over the next couple of weeks what changes. But the idea that individuals and groups can come together and put that kind of pressure and say, we don't want to stand for this, this is dangerous. It doesn't implicate First Amendment rights because we are not the government imposing rules on Facebook. We are users asking Facebook to do the right thing.
I would just add to that one of the things that affected me most about when I was reading about this position and what we were doing was the reality that I did not recognize that Facebook actually assists in recruiting for these white supremacist groups. And the way they assist in doing that is by their logarithms. In other words, you get content based upon your posts. So if you're posting something hateful, it somehow is able to get to these hate groups to post on those sites. So they're actually recruiting. You might have a person who's just, delving into some areas, who then gets support from others, which is really what snowballs the growth of that hate. So the idea that they're helping recruit is just horrifying to me.
And that sometimes an advertiser's content will be right next to a post from a hateful group. And so you're seeing something that some advertiser is paid for next to some white supremacist hateful propaganda. And Doug's right. Because of these algorithms, people are getting things that they don't want. And then some people are following those links and joining these groups that they never would have known about.
I just want to salute you for your work with that. I think that's a very, very important issue. A two-part question. Can you start out with Doug and then work back to Shira? Can you explain the importance of the NAACP and ADL partnership, number one, and then give us a little more information on the Black-Jewish Alliance, that importance?
Well, it's hard to overemphasize the partnership and the relationship that has been so strong between Jews and blacks over the years, and especially at the time of the civil rights movement. I tell you, last night I heard a discussion. There happened to have been a movie that was presented with regard to the history of black relations, and then a group that talked after. And to see the depth of that relationship, I'm actually looking at a picture here from the signing of the Civil Rights Act, and there you see, right next to each other, Dr. Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, Roy Wilkins from the NAACP, and our national director at that time in the 60s, Ben Epstein. There it is. And you see it, again and again, and the amount of Jewish activism. And you have to look back a little bit on Jews and our culture as relates to a few things, including slavery. Every year we celebrate the Passover, and every day in our regular service, in our prayer service that's done 3 times a day for Jews, we review and we think about the reality of us being slaves in Egypt and having been set free. And I think there's and the requirement to be open to the neighbor and to help the other. And all these things are really a part of who we are, and I think what drove us as a people to make this real coalition of blacks and Jews. Now, I'd have to say that the coalition, over the years, the ADL has always been there, but this general coalition, maybe waned a bit. And now we're really making an affirmative effort to bring that back strong. And that includes with what we're doing in Philadelphia with the Black Jewish Coalition and with what Kaleem, and I have talked about. We need each other. We need to be united. All of us that have the same basic beliefs of equality and redressing the wrongs and moving forward. And so I think it was it's been going on for many years as a bond and coalition, and now is the time to just rejuvenate it even more and come out stronger for it.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. The only thing I would add is you do hear a lot of people going back to that picture that Doug's talking about Dr. King and Rabbi Heschel walking together. And what we've been talking about a lot in the Black Jewish Alliance is creating that present, building that future, not relying on that past, but it's something that we have to work at all the time. To remember to stand up for each other, that hate against one is really hate against everybody. To be there to understand, to learn, to help others understand and learn what it is to be an ally, how we can take those steps forward. And those discussions, sometimes they're difficult, and sometimes they're easy, but they're always important and productive and supportive. And we hope it'll be a model for other regions across the country. And the partnership with the NAACP all over the country has been long-standing, and I think we partner whenever we can, and we're always stronger when we're in coalition, when we're not standing alone. And I think that's a critical part of both the NAACP's work and the ADL's work.
I don't think I'll be telling tales out of school if I say that Doug and I have talked about doing the Black-Jewish Alliance in this area, and I think that that's something that hopefully we'll get together sooner rather than later. I think we've sort of had it informally, but Shira, I think we need to sort of formalize that. Let me ask another question. Charlottesville was in my mind, a searing example of what should not happen in this country. What was your response to the Charlottesville, number one, and then our president's response, number two? Then the third part, what should we be doing about those kind of incidents?
So I'm going to start with the third part, because just this weekend in Pennsylvania, and farther to the west in Williamsport, a group, the National Socialist Movement, wanted to have this big rally. They didn't get their permit in April because of COVID. They didn't get their permit this week because of COVID, and so they were supposed to be on private property. But there was a group of people with Nazi flags, Nazi insignias, marching. Very small group. The police were there. There were no incidents. But this still happens. Luckily, we did not have a Charlottesville. I wasn't at the ADL then, but I know that people were horrified and committed to working together to stop that. Look, ADL is very strongly for free speech, and we understand that sometimes speech is hurtful and hateful, and that doesn't make it criminal, but it does make it wrong. And we can speak out in a way that law enforcement might not be able to take action and government can't, but we do need people to call out what is wrong. Whether that is you and me, whether that's members of our organizations, whether that's our elected officials. So there are some things that there are not two sides to, and I think in Charlottesville there were not two sides.
Doug?
I'd also say that with regard to things that we have and are doing, I mean, after Charlottesville, there was a very intense analysis of what happened and what occurred. And as part of that analysis, it was clear, for example, that there were weapons that they brought. They had their own, militia of sorts. I think it's even been called that was involved, and the recognition that that was against the law, and that they could, you have the police to protect you. You're not supposed to bring your own protection. And in that regard, and based upon certain laws. And there was an attempt actually to bring it somewhere else, not far from Charlottesville again, and they were able to stop that from happening because they could show that this was a coalition of these various groups, and that the purposes were not really what they stated their purposes were. So I think what we've learned from Charlottesville also is yes, freedom of speech is very important. Obviously, it's something we must protect it for sure. But at the same time, we have to take a look at the laws that we have in place to try to recognize that there are limits to free speech, clear and present danger, those kinds of things. And that when we see that reality occurring, that we have the right and not just the right, but the responsibility to take action. And I think that after Charlottesville, there was a renewed energy in this direction. And that's very important.
Okay. We're entering the last minutes of our program. Is there a question or a area that you wanted to cover, Shira, before we come down to the conclusion?
I just wanted to thank you. I think these conversations are so important. Anywhere that people kind of gather and have that opportunity to talk and to meet each other and learn, I think we need to promote those spaces and create them and let people, know what you're going through, know what I'm going through, know why it's different and what I can learn from you and how I can be there for you. Again, I want to give my condolences for the loss of Congressman Lewis and the Reverend this weekend. I mean, tremendous losses on Friday, and hopefully we can live up to their legacy and get into some good trouble together.
Doug, before we get to final questions, do you have something that you wanted covered that you didn't get a chance to cover?
no. Other than really just thanking you also, and telling the public, just how much I respect and just think you're amazing in all that you've done in our community and what you're doing for ACP and bringing people like Yolanda and the young generation so important. We have a younger generation now involved in our young leadership, and also the ADL isn't just Jewish either. We have people that aren't Jewish as parts of our board and of color, and it's so critical for us as we are to be passing it on to the next generation for sure.
And I'll just add to that, our Glass Leadership Program is part of our most diverse part. We have it's not just open to young Jewish people, but people come and they're talking about fighting hate, and they're the people who become the next leaders of our organization. So if there are people listening who want to get involved in our leadership program, a lot more of it's going to be virtual in the coming year. Let us know, and we can connect you with the right people. But it's a tremendous program. You'll meet great people from all over the region who are committed to the same values and ideals.
Well, you know what? I think I'm gonna ask the national president of Next Gen if she could work with you on that. That might be a partnership.
Absolutely.
Madam President?
Absolutely. Send it over. We'll share it not just with our young leaders, but we'll put it up on our social media feeds as well, because we all are fighting the same fight and uplifting the same communities for the betterment of all. So thank you so much for coming.
Great.
We have 5 minutes to go. Yolanda, I want to make sure that I ask you, do you have any final questions, statements, comments?
I would be remiss if I did not mention the Authors Roundtable again.
Right.
Thursday, July 23rd, 8 p.m. You can call in at 866-757-0756, or you can always join at NAACP.org. That's Tiffany Cross, D.L. Hughley, Lonnie Love, Bakari Sellers, President and CEO Jared Johnson, and Ed Gordon, who are going to be discussing the respective publications.
Before we sign off, I have final statements. Just ask you to do for 60 seconds. Shira and Doug, thank you so much for coming to this program. We're going to have you on again. This is an ongoing partnership, fellowship, interaction, and we appreciate ADL so much. We thank you for your past history of involvement, and we thank you for what's going to happen in the future. I think we're working on a joint communication, Shira. Did you get that?
I did, and adding to it and sending it back to you. I'm excited to be working together. It was beautiful what you wrote. I'm hopeful we can add some good stuff too. We're really excited about this. I know the work that you've done before I got here is tremendous together, and I'm excited to keep building the partnership and being in this fight together. That's the only way that we win.
Absolutely. We need partners. We have to work together, and we're so happy to work with like-minded people. That's important. Like-minded people, that doesn't mean that you agree 100% of the time on everything. Like-minded people means that you have a general consensus on issues and values, and I think we have that. My friend Doug?
Now, again, I would really just say thank you, and really, Colleen, regrettably too often, we have been in front of City Hall making statements and bringing people to the community. And the last few years have just been really tough, honestly, and for us all. And including a few weeks ago, marking the 30th day since the murder of Floyd and George Floyd. And I just, I hope and pray for the day that we're not going to be doing that anymore. And I think we can do it. We just have to really work hard and keep working at it, and I feel that we'll get there. That's the bottom line. That's so good. 2 minutes left and counting. Again, our special guest, Shira Goodman, the executive director of ADL, our new friend, and Doug Stanger, our executive board member, our old friend, and we have enjoyed having you. 30 seconds, Yolanda, go.
Well, now that we're at the end of the show, they were so great that I'd like to share them with you as our guests.
Oh, my goodness. You guys, listen, what Yolanda and I have is a friendly competition of guests, but she takes advantage of me because I'm a layperson. She's a lawyer. When we had the Attorney General on, she claimed him because they're alumni. When we had the prosecutor on, she claimed him because they went to Howard University together. And when we had the Lieutenant Governor on, she claimed her because they're women together. So I'm left out in the cold. So that's why when you guys came on, I said, whose guests are they going to be? Can I have any guests? And it worked out for the best. So, but we appreciate your time. We thank you so much. This is going to be a good partnership. We look forward to having you again. We look forward to having you on NAACP issues as we go forward. And Yolanda, we look forward to you working with their youth program. I think that's a potential right there. And Doug, hopefully we'll be announcing our Black Jewish Alliance shortly, moving forward. To our listening audience, please stay safe. We thank you for tuning in. We ask you to tune in again next week when we're going to have Black journalists talking about the role of media in the struggle. We're going to have Clyde Hughes, and we're going to have Earl Harvey. Clyde Hughes from does a blog. Earl Harvey is AC News and Time, so they will be our guests next week. To our good guests, have a safe weekend for you and your family. To my co-hosts, thank you for allowing me to have the guests. And we'll see you next week. To our audience, when we fight, we win. When we fight, we win. And when we fight, we win. And we thank you for tuning in.